Welcome everyone to the Space Manager presentation by Heathrow. Unfortunately, my video isn't working, so you can't see me today. But let's crack on. So, a bit of background about Heathrow. Our purpose is to make every journey better, and our vision is to be an extraordinary airport fit for the future. We employ over 80,000 people. Oh, my click-through is not working. There we go. 80,000 people and welcome over 78 million passengers a year. That's handling over 450,000 flights, which all enables us to carry over 1.4 million tonnes of cargo. Our airfield boundary measures 1.2 thousand hectares, and across the estate, we manage approximately 26,000 units. So why do we need a space manager? Similar to most businesses, before they embark on the new GIS journey, our existing systems was not designed to manage space. Space information was held across several different sources, Excel spreadsheets, some in systems. It was very manual, and the process to keep it updated and tracked was laborious. The accuracy of information was dependent on input and disciplines, so subject to user errors. And when requests for new spaces were made, the teams actually manually look through all the systems, contact asset managers, or physically go out into the terminals or on the perimeters to visit the space to make sure it reconciled. There was a lack of accurate records to show which companies were in each spaces and, more importantly, paying for them. And the uncertainty over spaces, status and ownerships creates a commercial and corporate risk for health and safety. So basically, we needed a joined up approach for our systems and our teams. The purpose of our project and the objectives were we needed a simple to use, quick responsive system with integration with our current systems and to create a single version of the truth. We needed an efficient allocation of space, clear KPI reporting, and ensure all spaces are accounted for and allocated correctly. So our journey so far, we only began the design phase in September last year, and we started the build phase in November. Then shortly after Christmas, we undertook UAT, and in February, we went live with the system. So in just over 5 months, we delivered a system which for an IT project in a very large organisation is very fast. It was widely appreciated. To deliver this, we delivered 8 sprints. We had 17 people working on the project, and we had 386 DevOps tasks. But underpinning all of this was data mapping and cleansing, which is still ongoing. As you can imagine, with data in multiple systems and spreadsheets without any unique identifier, it's been challenging to map our data. However, with Space Manager, it's now allowing us to track and identify those spaces. So what did we deliver? Using digital floor plans, we delivered a simple to use system, allowing us to easily identify spaces and continue to improve data cleansing. We enabled integration with our property management system, and we now have twice daily updates of movements and occupations, allowing accurate data to be updated automatically. This now allows users to actually trust the data. So once they've input it into the management system, they can see it that day. Role-based security to ensure that we can display sensitive information to the correct teams, for example, rental values. With the integration to our property management system, we can display agreement details and have links to our agreement documentation on SharePoint. This is creating that single version of the truth. The system is available on our mobiles, including locational guidance. This enables us to be out and about in the terminals or on the perimeters, reviewing spaces, and then actually being able to see the unit and agreement data as well. We use ArcGIS Survey 123 to allow us to upload and store photos either directly from our mobiles or when we're back at our desks. Users can also report and track data issues. Again, this is reinforcing that trust within the system and the data. So far, we've delivered 5 dashboards, which allows us to report on different KPIs and different search parameters from the Explorer app. And we also use Esri's partner Landclan to display red line, title and deed information. So what's next on our GIS journey? So we're currently delivering small enhancements and we continue with our data mapping and cleansing. However, excitedly, we are now planning our phase 2. This will include additional data feeds, for example, from our retail system, additional map layers, wayfinding, dashboards, and obviously following the conference last week, some of those requirements are growing. Now I'll hand over to Daniel to give you a demo of the system. Thank you very much.
So thanks for that, Nikki, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Daniel, and I'm going to give you a quick demo of the Space Manager suite of applications, as well as give you a little behind the scenes knowledge of how we structured the digital floor plans that Nikki mentioned. So from an issue platform point of view, what powers Space Manager behind the scenes? Well, the model that all of the apps and widgets revolve around is in fact an indoor model, and it's a great example of making use of Esri Indoors model without making use of the ArcGIS Indoors viewer itself. Yes, you heard that correctly. We designed an indoor solution without making use of any ArcGIS Indoors applications. Instead, we utilized Indoors capability available within other applications within the Esri product stack. So these apps were primarily ArcGIS Experience Builder and ArcGIS dashboards, although we did also make use of Survey 123 and Hub to enhance the end user experience, which I'll touch on a bit later. Now, the reason for using ArcGIS Experience Builder and ArcGIS dashboards instead of an indoor application is that Experience Builder supports the indoor model via a native floor filter widget, which the indoor app also does. But what Experience Builder allows us to do is embed other capabilities into our apps, such as advanced filtering and analytical tools. And within Experience Builder, we can also customize pop-ups, alter the look and feel of the app to suit Heathrow's requirements, and with further feature enhancements, add editing and further analytical capabilities. Now, as Nikki mentioned, we did make use of Survey 123 within the system, and this allowed users to add attachments or comments, report errors, or attach documents and images to spaces across the airport. So within the pop-up for each space across the airport, there was a link to a photo collection or error reporting form, both powered by Survey 123. And these allow the users of a certain privilege to capture this additional information and notify administrators of the system of any changes. It's also worth noting that embedded within these pop-ups is a dynamic URL that also takes the users off to a SharePoint location where more information about that space can be obtained. Now, before I show you how the app works, let me quickly explain how we structured Heathrow's indoor model. Now, at a very high level, if you strip it back, the basic version of the indoor model is a simple hierarchical data structure made up of 4 parts. So using indoor terminology, at the top level, we have a site. And this can be a single location, such as London or Edinburgh, or in Heathrow's case, it can be a terminal, for example, Terminal 2 or Terminal 5. Next, we have a facility, and this is Esri speak for a building. So in Heathrow's case, this is Terminal 2A or the Compass Centre, which is where the Heathrow offices are located. Next, we have levels, which are fairly self-explanatory. These are the floors within a building. And finally, you have units, and these are the individual spaces or rooms on each level. Now, each subsequent layer has an attribute that relates it to its neighbour in this structure. So units contain a field that denote the level it's on. Levels have a field that denote the facility it's within. And lastly, facilities have a field that tell the model which site the building resides within. So putting it simplistically, the indoor model is a series of related tables with some key fields that tell the model where a room sits in relation to its building. So for Space Manager, we took Heathrow's already comprehensive internal mapping plans and adapted them to fit Esri's indoor model. And using the REST API and some related records, we were also able to bring in some additional information from Heathrow's property management solution into the system. But how does this model fit into Experience Builder and dashboards? Now, as I mentioned, Experience Builder has a native floor filter widget that you can add to an application, much like any other widget in Experience Builder. And if you configure the data correctly, i.e. you create a floor-aware model, you can configure floor filtering within the map properties. The floor filter widget in Experience Builder will then pick this up and allow you to navigate the data just like you're seeing on screen. So here we're filtering to a site, to a facility, and then finally a floor where we see all of the units that reside on that floor. Now, dashboards don't have a native floor filter widget, but what we can do is configure standard dashboard filters to interact with the indoor data structure in much the same way that it does with Experience Builder. So along the top, we have our filters for sites, for buildings, and for floors. And in some of the dashboards we created, we also have filters to allow users to filter rooms by specific tenants. So you'll notice that as the filters change, the widgets along the side update as well. And these display several different metrics, from a count of leases expiring to a breakdown of how much area a tenant occupies across the airport. And thanks to the indoor data structure, a user can filter down to see how many leases or how many rent reviews are expiring on a floor-by-floor basis. Now, the final thing to cover is the security steps we've put in place for the Space Manager app, future-proofing it and ensuring everyone at the appropriate level has the correct access for their needs. At the unit and lease level, we've set up a series of protected views to ensure that only users with the appropriate privileges have access to certain fields, whether that be a confidential client reference number or an outstanding lease balance. Only users with selected privileges can view all of this information. And what this allows us to do, though, is future-proof this system for future developments. Within the wider Heathrow property team, they're set to start using the same indoor model in the near future. And this allows us to incorporate their data into the same data structure, but keep that confidential information hidden from other teams that use the system. So when we move from retail and property to the wider commercial team, it will be powered using the same underlying indoor model. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Nikki.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So this is how we have utilised Esri at Airedale General Hospital to help us with our survey and ongoing maintenance of our RAAC estate. So a little bit of background about the estate. So we've got 83% of the estate's made out of RAAC, some 19,000 precast reinforced aerated autoclaved concrete panels in the first floor and roof, and all of the internal and external walls as well. We've got 30,000 square meters of flat roof. It's the largest flat roofed estate in the NHS. In the 8th wettest place in the UK, which is not a great combination considering the effect of moisture absorbance on the RAAC, with 6,900 defects around the RAAC, and with the only hospital that has issues with the ordinary weight concrete frame as well. So following the Standing Committee for Structural Safety alert back in 2019, NHS England mandated all NHS estates teams to survey for the presence of RAAC. I led that survey here at our estate and found that 83% of the estate as it exists today, the whole of the original estate from the 1960s, was constructed wholly of RAAC. That led us to then have to incorporate a series of measured surveys, a numbering scheme of all of the planks in the estate, and apply a series of structural engineering measures to that. So that we duly started that back in 2019, and that's been ongoing in-house since 2021. Working with our structural engineering partners, Curtains, we've developed a frequency of inspection based on our hierarchy of risk and current structural engineering guidance, which allows us to move planks up and down a risk profile dependent on whether the defect or the deterioration is in steady state. This leads us to complete 50,000 panel inspections annually. So it's a huge amount of data that we're generating. So as the scheme started and the survey started, we were printing out paper packs to do this. So we've got CAD drawings for the whole of the estate. We were then printing out paper templates with copies of the latest photographs of each of the defects, and then sending the survey team out to complete the inspections. The paper surveys were then returned to the office and input into Excel and CAD by an administrative team. This became problematic as the issue grew in scale, because as you can appreciate, carrying out 50,000 inspections annually, it generated a huge amount of data that was being double handled both by the survey team and the administrative team. And similar to Vicky alluding to in her presentation, because it's a human interaction, it's prone to error. So we had error in inputting the data, we had error in retrieving the data in terms of reporting back to stakeholders, and given the amount of risk and reporting around the RAAC issue, that became incredibly problematic for us in terms of consistency and in terms of confidence in the data set, and ultimately our ability to manage the risk for the trust. So we realised that this was a big issue, and we reached out to BIS Consult to help us digitise the process, resulting in the platform that we have to share with you today.
Thank you, Richard, and hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today. So yeah, when I was introduced to Airedale's RAAC team last year, they already had a very robust survey process, but as Richard's just explained, it had become unsustainable from a data management perspective. So we helped to design and implement a new digital process using ArcGIS Online, which we determined would create around a 50% efficiency saving. So these before and after process maps illustrate the changes to the process and how some of their activities would no longer be required. So those are shown in red, and they include the preparation of the paper-based inspection packs, scanning and reporting of the reports back in the office and transposing that data into Excel, as well as updating their CAD files to highlight different risk ratings. So these would all now happen automatically in real time. Activities shown in green in the new process are still required, but they are now, well, they would be significantly faster. So that includes scheduling the surveys, completing the inspection forms, analysing the findings to report on the process. These would all require significantly less time. In addition to the efficiency savings, we determined a number of other outcomes and benefits. So it would also improve resilience of the data by reducing the risk of human error. Assurance and transparency would improve with full auditability of every inspection. And the data would provide richer insights, improving reporting and decision making. We'd also achieve some health and safety benefits. For example, we can use geofencing to warn surveyors if they're entering an area that's unsafe. And in November 2023, the system went live, and these photos show the first inspections being carried out using an iPad. So here's a brief summary of the new capabilities that we've established. Paper-based surveys are now conducted via an app, and the system provides a live integrated system of record, which updates in real time. The data is readily available and searchable, which simplifies previously time-intensive data mining and data analysis activities. This also improves reporting, which is linked to funding for the remediation works. And since there is more assurance in the data, Airedale can be more confident in their decision-making. Overall, it's easier for the team to collaborate with other stakeholders, and we've reduced ad hoc requests for information from other teams. The roof inspection tool is a good example, which overlays aerial drone imagery with plank survey data and roof access information, allowing roof engineers to readily identify and access damaged areas of the roof. And since the platform is open source, there's lots of potential to incorporate more data and develop the tool even further. So looking ahead, the current roadmap includes establishing a framework and a training model to deploy a safe system of work, which will incorporate and align resources with processes, systems, and data. Working with MTC, we're going to be trialling remote monitoring, which could assist with live measurement of deflection and moisture ingress, as well as adding system alerts to the dashboard. and early warnings of changes in plant condition. We are looking to develop a 3D floor-aware model and to incorporate information on internal and external planks, similar to Heathrow. We're thinking, very much about indoors modelling. We want to overlay information about engineering solutions and cost data for the remediated planks, which can then be used to enhance business intelligence and future work scoping. And finally, by incorporating the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can adjust plank ratings in line with guidance changes and further automate the process. And we hope to make it even easier and more intuitive to interrogate large amounts of data. If you'd like to speak to us about anything we've discussed today, please use the QR code on the screen now, and you can shoot us a message on our Contact Us form. And thank you very much for listening.
We've just seen two great examples there from Airedale and Heathrow of how location intelligence is supporting both space management and maintenance. I'm now going to take a step back for a moment and think more generally about GIS capabilities. GIS software allows us to represent something in the real world, bringing together data and information to create context. Analysis creates new learning, and it's this learning that then enables you to make a decision in the real world. In other words, GIS is enabling us to build and operate digital twins. A digital twin is simply a virtual representation of a system that allows us to model the real world, its behavior and characteristics. And using this approach allows us to better understand the system, but more importantly, have the ability to monitor, manage, and optimize it. It can be helpful to think of a digital twin not as one thing, but in terms of a maturity index, which addresses the needs of different audiences. Starting at the bottom, we have the capture level, and as you move up, the complexity is increasing as a digital twin becomes more mature. So taking a look at each of these levels in a bit more detail. At the base level, it's all about capturing and collating information. That information and data is a representation of something within the real world that holds value. So we have this foundation capture level of maturity. From here, we want to visualize the data we have and see it in the context of the natural and built environment. We need to bring together data from different sources to provide that context, overlaying datasets to reveal relationships. This is the visual level of maturity. And we now want to start asking questions, interrogating the digital twin using spatial analysis techniques to find our answers. The analytical level of maturity allows us to derive greater insight from our data. And up until this point, the digital twin is static. All of the information captured, visualized, and analyzed represents a snapshot in time. And that works in many situations, but if your system is constantly changing, like at Airedale and Heathrow, you're going to need a way to take into account real-time information. Moving on to this real-time maturity level allows us to understand trends and patterns in the data, increasing situational awareness and improving decision-making. We also need to consider who is making decisions in a scenario like this. Is it a human managing the changing nature of a transport network, or could it be a trained AI or algorithm evaluating the system, spotting the patterns and trends for us, reducing bottlenecks? And this brings us on to our final two levels. Pulling together the previous four pillars, we can start to run realistic simulations with human input to understand how our choices will impact a situation. From this, we can learn, optimize, grow, and start making decisions in the real world. And if we extrapolate that out, more decisions are made autonomously, the system continues to learn, lots of data is brought together from different sources. The fully autonomous level sits at the top of this maturity index. And whilst we might not be here yet, we know that location and the previous 5 pillars of maturity will play a vital role in this. Using location, we can aspire to get to the stage where we can develop a picture report of a city, an interconnecting view of multiple digital twins, road networks, buildings, green space, something tangible that our customers, stakeholders, and non-technical audiences can interact with. So by building a digital twin, you can bring together data and information to create context and use this learning in your day-to-day operations. So how can you apply this to your own property and estate management? Well, I'm going to focus in on two areas. The first is the analytical tools that ArcGIS provides, looking at how you can gain insight into the future planning of your estate. And secondly, no matter what industry you work in, there will always be a need for sharing and collaboration. You need to share your insights with stakeholders and the public to get people behind your initiatives and increase transparency and trust. In today's demo, I'm going to use two tools, ArcGIS Pro, our desktop GIS software, and ArcGIS Story Maps, enabling you to add a narrative alongside your apps and maps. Location is one of the most important success factors for organizations, and it can help keep fixed and overhead costs low and at the same time accessibility high. And this has never been more important in the context of today's new way of working and the increased environmental pressures we are all facing. To select the most optimal sites for your estate, multiple criteria needs to be considered. Where are customers or workforce located? Where are my existing sites? And maybe where are competitor sites relative to these? ArcGIS Pro gives you network-based spatial analysis capabilities to help you make better decisions based on your goals and criteria. So moving into Pro, I'll take you through the demonstration. In my map, I have fictional locations of 6 offices and a fictional workforce working in these. This company wants to reduce their land holdings and optimize their estate, but they need to make sure they're choosing the right locations to keep open. The tool I want to use for this analysis can be found under the Network Analysis menu. These tools are available with the Network Analyst extension. I can see the network source the tool is using. This is our model of the transport system. And if you're using the default network from ArcGIS Online, this will consume credits, but you can also repoint this to a network you have stored locally or one you have published on ArcGIS Enterprise. There's lots of different tools to choose from, but I'm going to choose the location allocation option to choose the best locations for my offices. This loads a new analysis layer into my map that I can begin to configure to start my analysis. The first thing I need to do is import my facilities and demand points. My facilities are my office locations and my demand points are my workforce. I can then set up the criteria for my analysis. I have chosen to use driving time, but there's lots of different options available. And I've also chosen to add a 60-minute cutoff criteria for my analysis. Under the type menu, I can then choose what problem I'm trying to solve. In this example, I've chosen maximize coverage and minimize facilities because I want to find the least number of offices that will support my workforce. I've already run this analysis, so turning on my results, you can see that lines have been added to my map connecting my workforce with the most suitable office locations, and 4 out of the 6 offices have been starred, as these are the chosen locations the tool has given me. This is a very simplistic demonstration, but you can consider lots more factors in your analysis. Do locations need to be weighted differently? Are there any barriers to movement you want to consider? And as well as using the network-based spatial analysis capabilities of ArcGIS Pro, you could also analyze the solar potential of your estate. To do this, you would need a digital surface model. This one is sourced from the Environment Agency and shows the elevation of the ground as well as features on the ground like buildings and trees. Raster functions allow you to create a hillshade from this, and you can begin to distinguish individual features more, even picking out some features on roofs of buildings. To calculate the solar potential of an area, you can use the raster solar radiation tool. This is found within the Spatial Analysis toolbox under Solar Radiation, and you'll need a Spatial Analyst license to run this tool. The tool calculates radiation based on a sophisticated model that takes into account the position of the sun throughout the year and at different times of the day, as well as objects that may block sunlight and the slope and orientation of the surface. You can also add a mask in your environmental settings to run for your area of interest. In this example, I have run the tool with building footprints in Cambridge as the mask, and you can see the results on my map, with the darker orange and red shades showing buildings with a higher potential electricity production. The next step would then be to find the most suitable buildings by looking at not only the amount of radiation the roof will receive, but also the slope angle and the direction the roof faces. Continuing the theme of looking at ways to optimize the environmental footprint of your estate, we can also use GIS to assess our natural capital, which is becoming increasingly more important to prevent habitat and biodiversity loss. At this business park, I've used OS Mastermap to classify the land use so I can see the makeup of the site. Publishing this data to ArcGIS Online and adding it into a dashboard allows me to interrogate the data, seeing how much green space I have on my site, and also the overall makeup, comparing the built surfaces to the green space. When planning our estate for the future, it's vital we know where our natural resources are, especially in the context of the new biodiversity net gain legislation and thinking about the well-being of our workforce. This data could then be complemented with data collected in the field on the specific habitats found. So once you've carried out analysis on your estate, how do you share insights with stakeholders? Well, one option is to make use of ArcGIS story maps. I have two examples here to illustrate what is a story map. The first one is from Merton Council and explains the sustainable infrastructure in the area. I can scroll down to find more about the work and click on the headings to jump to an area of interest. Interactive maps bring this data to life, and as I scroll down, the map layers are filtered. In this second example about Toronto that the Esri Story Maps team have built, a 3D map has been embedded to really bring the city to life. As I scroll down, the zoom extent changes, and images have been embedded to really allow me to see what this looks like in the real world. It's really easy to get started with story maps. From the home page, you can create a new story from scratch or choose one of our quick start templates. Looking at a story map that I started earlier, you can see I've added a custom theme to have a unique look and branding to my story map. This can be found in the design settings, and you can share themes with your organization to ensure a consistent look and feel across your web apps. Moving down, you can see I've added some information already. To add more content, you use the plus button and you can choose from text to embedded media, interactive maps, images, or other embedded applications. I've created an express map to show the 4 office locations that we want to keep open, and I've built this within the Story Maps builder, but you can also add existing maps from your ArcGIS content. Scrolling down, you can see that I've added a 3D scene to showcase my solar potential analysis. Users can interact with this data and really get a feel for where the potential is. And finally, I've added my natural capital dashboard at the bottom, with again, users can interact with. If you'd rather a slide-based tool for presentations, take a look at Story Map briefings. This is similar to the story map I've just shown you, but in slide format, and you can choose different layouts, embedding your apps just as before. So there are some ideas on how you can begin to use ArcGIS for the future planning and optimization of your estate. If you have any questions on what I've shown, then please add them to Slido, and with that, I'll hand back to Vicky.
So we're now going to move into the Q&A section. So if you've got any further questions, just as Catherine said, please add them into Slido. We've got some great questions already. So can I ask presenters to camera on, please? And we'll answer as many as we possibly can. Nikki, I know you may have issues with yours. So first question. Catherine, I think this one's for you. Does Esri have any products for land management for environmental purposes, UK Hab or BNG?
Yep, so I guess the example I just showed there about mapping your natural capital, that's a good place to start. Where are your natural resources? We've also got all of our mobile applications if you're collecting information in the field. And I'd also suggest you check out our partners Temple Group. So they have developed a suite a UK Hab application specifically for the BNG legislation, and we can share some resources around that in the follow-up too.
Fabulous, thank you. Next question, Airedale. Does the approach taken at Airedale have other applications, or could it be used by other trusts or organisations in different sectors? That's a great question.
Yeah, shall I take that first and then?
That would be great, yes please.
Yeah, and Richard might want to add something to that as well. But yeah, it certainly has other use cases. We really started from scratch with Airedale, looking at their specific requirements, but the approach and the platform and the system, the sort of solution that we arrived at could definitely be applied to other problems. We've had discussions around, similarities with asbestos tracking and other lots of other asset management applications. And yeah, I think there's lots of potential for it to be adopted, potentially other trusts or organisations in different sectors with RAAC or other asset management challenges. Absolutely. Richard, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I'll just echo what you said, really. It's an incredibly powerful tool that can be used for sort of every aspect of asset management and tracking. It's definitely beneficial for other organisations or trusts, and definitely within other sectors, particularly the public sector. One of the things that we're endeavouring to do using this platform is to build a safe system of work for the management of RAAC and other assets that can be problematic, such as asbestos. So yeah, there's absolutely application that other trusts and organisations can use.
Thank you both. Yeah, I can see it working in cladding as well, and the cladding assessment. So question 3, thanks for the update, Heathrow. Very interesting. Oh, we've moved. How did you link the property data, i.e. lease info, with the dashboards? I've got an extra bit on that as well, Dan, on the asset naming conventions that are used in there and how that links back to the asset management.
Sure. So as I kind of alluded to in the presentation, the lease information is stored in a system called MRI. And what we do is we pull that information from MRI into a hosted feature layer on ArcGIS Online. And using a reference number, we can relate individual units within Heathrow to that lease information. But there are instances, for example, where one lease can apply to multiple units. And what we've done, especially in the dashboards, is created a custom data expression whereby in those little widgets you saw, we can display a custom kind of view of the lease information, who owns that lease, the duration of that lease, as well as the current tenant within that space.
Thank you. So another one for Airedale. What was the biggest challenges in implementing the solution at Airedale?
So shall I start with some technical challenges and then again I'll hand over to Richard. Yeah, there's a few interesting kind of technical challenges which won't go into too much detail, but one that we spent a long time discussing and figuring out was the fact that RAAC planks, there's not one per room. Sometimes they span multiple rooms, 2 or 3 rooms. And so we had to find a way to attribute survey information from multiple rooms to a single plank. But yeah, we overcame obviously all the technical challenges. I think change management was another big aspect. This was a big change for the team and for the surveyors themselves, who've been used to a different way of working, the previous way of working for quite a long time. So suddenly transitioning to a digital process was a challenge inherently there. But I think the biggest one for me is probably comes back to data quality, which is interesting because it's what Nikki also mentioned in her presentation about Heathrow. Obviously, there's 20,000 planks. We had to attribute all of the data that was sat in lots of different spreadsheets to those planks, and then doing so and working through the process, it kind of uncovered some issues with the data, but it actually brought those issues to the surface and allowed us to address them. Recently, we developed a dashboard which kind of further illustrated some of those issues, and it's allowing the RAAC team at Airedale to continually improve and cleanse their data. So I think that'd be me from a technical perspective. Richard, did you want to add to
that? Yeah, I will. Yeah. From a client's perspective, actually, there weren't really many challenges. Nick and the team at BIS were so professional that essentially we workshopped out our requirements, and then I'm sure he had a lot of challenges with it, but we didn't really see that. I suppose the biggest thing we had was the fear of the unknown, and sort of that resistance to change and the shift to digitization, as it were, and the fear around that, how that would look, and the data security. I suppose I was concerned about the ability to retrieve the information, because it's a live issue that's very heavily reported on by both internal and external stakeholders, so I couldn't afford to lose the data sets. I suppose that's where my anxiety was, but all of that's actually proved unfounded. That the survey team have taken to it. I don't imagine they could envisage going back, really. It's so effective and intuitive to use, the system that we've had designed by Nick, that it's one of those things, isn't it? I struggle to remember why we would have never done it before.
Thank you very much for that. What's the best alternative to OS Master Map for mapping land use, or organisation doesn't have a Master Map licence?
Yeah, I can take that one, Vicky.
Great, thank you, Catherine.
So I guess you want to be thinking about what open data would suit your requirements. One option could be looking at something like OpenStreetMap, but the level of detail varies in different areas. I'd also suggest having a look in our Living Atlas. So there's lots of habitat and land use data, some derived from Sentinel imagery, and also things like Natural England's Living England habitat data as well. So yeah, I'd say Living Atlas is a good place to look for alternatives.
I'd also like to add, we mentioned LandClan earlier in the presentation, and they partnered with the Heathrow presentation for base data. They have a lot of data layers in there already pre-configured, all the authoritative data sets, etc. So as a partner organisation, if you haven't got any geodatabase at all or any base layers, they can be a great solution for that. So, Nikki, I think this is a question for you. Who uses the app at Heathrow, and what are the benefits so far? I think you could expand on that, actually, and who would you like to use? Could it be a wayfinding solution, etc., in the future, or utilised by partner companies, facilities management companies, etc.?
Yep, I'm happy to expand on it. So currently it's rolled out to our commercial team. So that's property, retail, service access, etc. Benefits, visibility of our data. It's been transformational that we can actually just look at a map and see where our vacant space is, or where we've got agreements that are expiring soon, so we can think about projects if we're moving bits around the terminal. So yes, it's visibility of data rather than just seeing it on a spreadsheet. It's been amazing. Future planning as well. We are replacing our overarching GIS system. So this is a commercial aspect of it, but there's a project that is running alongside us as well, which is a much larger project, and they will be rolling it out across the wider Heathrow, and we're feeding into that. As for wayfinding, we are looking at wayfinding for internal purposes so that we can know the safe walking routes as well as obviously trying to find units that have in some deep and dark part of the airport. Rolling out to the public, we're not doing that at the moment. Probably look at licenses for that, but we also are talking to our wayfinding team to look at opportunities since they have seen the capability that Esri can provide.
Fabulous. And the next question's for you as well on the reporting. Is the tool aimed at internal staff, or is it also accessible for external users to report issues?
It is only internal. We do have other methods for members of the public to report issues, but what we're using the tool for is to report data and geometric issues. So it's great to be able to track errors, see them visually on the map, to know that actually something's wrong with that unit, which all helped with data cleansing, and it will continue going forward as well.
Thank you. Catherine, I think the next one's for you. Are the details of the Cambridge Solar available for use?
So yeah, we can share some, we do have a public app that uses open data, so we can share that in the follow-up, and also there's a good tutorial available online if you want to follow the analysis and do it for yourself as well.
And Nick, how will geofencing help at Airedale?
Do you want to take that, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. The geofencing is actually really significant in terms of our health and safety and the risk management around the planks, as the whole of the roof is constructed from RAAC panels and has been subject to a huge amount of defects from environmental factors, standing water, things like that. We've been able to take high-resolution drone survey imagery and overlay that over the model that Nick's built, and then adjust the contrast levels so that we can actually see the risk profile of each panel live as we're walking across the roof. So then if we implement a geogate there, that'll be able to inform maintenance operatives or contractors that are working on a plant that's on the roof of a safe route of access and egress from the structure, and also inform around loading and areas not to cross. So yeah, in terms of a health and safety risk management, it's a huge part of the strategy.
Absolutely. So we've got time for one more question. So we'll take the top one. Do you have to have a BI license for ArcGIS indoors to implement the data model and therefore make use of the native experience builder floor filter?
Sure. So there's two parts to this. There are two main indoor licenses. There's the indoor license for Pro, which allows you to create the indoor model within ArcGIS Pro, which you can then publish to ArcGIS Online, and then you can then use the native flow filtering function within Experience Builder. For the Heathrow project, though, we made use of the ArcGIS Indoors organization license, and that was just to do with those different views that I talked about in the presentation, so setting up the different levels for different permissions. But in theory, you can create your own indoor model without the need for the license. You just need to create your own schema. Hope that answers the question.
I think that does. Thank you. So that's that we've run out of time for questions now. If you have further questions or we've not had time to answer your question, then do email them at sales@esriuk.com.